We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight for the Impact Theater Live Showcase. I'm Deb Kavanaugh, President of Jewish Federation of Sarasota-Manatee, and this is Shep Englander, our CEO. We are very happy to be with you tonight for this wonderful program. Shep, would you please say a few words about Federation and our involvement with Impact Theater?
Certainly. Thank you, Deb. What a beautiful audience. Packed. They're scalping tickets out front. Lucky you got in time. I'm very fortunate to help lead our Jewish Federation. For those of you who aren't familiar, the Jewish Federation is the umbrella organization for our local Jewish community. There are 130 Jewish federations around the country, and we are responsible for making sure that the local Jewish community is safe and secure and has everything it needs to thrive. And one of those things is to make sure that people are comfortable and accepted and included. And we can't do that unless everyone, regardless of their backgrounds, feels the same. And that's why building strong relationships with lots of other communities and people from different backgrounds and understanding each other's stories is so central to what the Jewish Federation is about, and therefore why we're so proud to be able to be a funder and sponsor of Impact Theater, and so amazed at the creativity and passion that all of you and your children and Bette Zaret and her partners have put in to make this an institution here in Sarasota.
Thank you so much. And now I'd like to introduce our MC for the evening, Renee James Gilmore.
My name is Renee James Gilmore, and I want to welcome you to our 2024 Impact Theater Showcase. This program, which is now in its second year, means a whole lot to me because Newtown is my hometown. I'm a fourth-generation daughter born into a family that has a long and proud history of actively promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in Sarasota. In 1979, my father and 3 other Black residents filed a lawsuit now known as James versus the City of Sarasota. The lawsuit was successfully prosecuted, and as a result, single-member voting districts became the law in Sarasota. And for the first time, the Black community had its first representative in city government. It was the first time there was truly an inclusive voice of the people. It takes courage and collaboration, but this I learned after that fight concluded. It's tough, but you really can fight City Hall. But perhaps more than anything, I feel connected to tonight's program because when I attended Riverview High School, I fought for and won the right for my class to have the opportunity to write and perform a Black History program. And it was an opportunity for us to raise awareness about a human condition that is sometimes very, very difficult to speak about, but is important to be discussed and remembered. So these days I host Empowering Voices on ABC 7s on Saturday mornings. Thank you. And if you're interested in local issues, particularly as they relate to diversity, inclusion, and social justice, please tune in. I want to let you know that tonight you are in for a real treat because we're honoring the students and adults who have taken their time so generously and learned so much about history, about each other, and most importantly, perhaps, the shared legacies between the African American community and the Jewish community. Impact Theater offers students the opportunity to get to know both Holocaust survivors and African American elders who experienced extraordinary times. They get to learn about history firsthand from those who bore witness to it and who actually lived through it. I think you'll agree such an opportunity is invaluable to helping our students to understand the past and decide how they will live their lives and their future. Impact Theater is a positive and innovative collaboration between the African American and Jewish communities. It's our sincere hope and our expectation that this project has motivated our students, whom we like to call agents of impact, to commit to positively impacting our world as they live out their lives. Tonight, through a variety of art forms, our students will honor their adult partners whom they've interviewed and spent time with over the past year. Also, nationally recognized touring artist and composer Perry Smilo and Westcoast Black Theater Troupe members, under the expert creative direction of founder and artistic director Nate Jacobs, and a wonderful surprise guest, award-winning actress and Broadway star Ann Morrison, who also serves as a mentor for our student agents of impact. They're going to entertain us with uplifting music that honors the struggles and triumphs of Blacks and Jewish people. The Impact Theater project has a unique, ambitious, and praiseworthy vision and scope, and we want to share that with you. So now we'll hear from the founders of the project, Bette Zaret of the Jewish Federation of Sarasota-Manatee, and Walter Gilbert from Newtown Alive.
Thank you all for joining us for the second annual Impact Theater Live Showcase. After a successful first year, we were able to continue our vision to educate younger generations about the common history of oppression and persecution among Jewish and Black people, all made possible thanks to our major sponsor, the Jewish Federation of Sarasota-Manatee, and our community partners, Newtown Alive, the Sarasota African American Cultural Coalition, and Westcoast Black Theater Troupe. With special thanks to our volunteers, our incredible volunteers, and our generous donors, Roxy and Ian Black, Steve Kahn, the Kozlowski Foundation, Holly Schertzer, Dr. Barry and Ann Stein, and the Johnson Singer Foundation for their continued and unwavering support.
African American and Jewish communities are experiencing an increase in the overt expressions of hatred and bias, racism, and anti-Semitism. We believe there is much to be done to help reverse this
Trajectory.
through education by engaging our community, especially our youth, and by demonstrating how critically important it is to recognize and stand up to resist all forms and expressions of hatred. This program was inspired by the close collaboration and highly productive relationship of Dr. Martin Luther King and Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. These historical icons joined forces and stood tall to fight for civil rights, human rights, and world peace.
Learning from history and helping to create a better future is what the Impact Theater Project is all about. The purpose of this project is to celebrate respect, inclusion, and appreciation of our individual and mutual histories. So how do we do that? As part of the Impact Theater Project, students and elders participated in several educational activities, including lectures, films, and discussion groups, a tour of Newtown on the Newtown Trolley, and a visit to the Florida Holocaust Museum in St. Petersburg. But the cornerstone of the program centers around the respectful relationships and indeed friendships that were forged by our participating students and their elders with whom they were partnered. After being trained and coached on interviewing techniques by Joan Lowry, Carol Wolfe, and Helen McBean, African American students conducted video-recorded one-on-one interviews of Holocaust survivors, and Jewish students interviewed African American elders who lived during segregation. Those interviewed shared with the students their stories of survival, resilience, inner strength, and hope.
Following their interviews, the students worked with expert mentors, Nancy Rucker, Judy Levine, Ann Morrison, and Blake Walton to create the presentations that you will see this evening. The students will encapsulate their elder stories, express how the experience affected them, and describe what course of action they plan to take as a result.
We can honestly say that this project has once again been transformational and revelatory, with so many aha moments. We sincerely hope that today's presentations, which reflect a great many of those moments, will be moving, memorable, and impactful for you as well. We'd like to thank all of our amazing students and elders, our agents of impact, and all those who supported this remarkable initiative. And we thank all of you for joining us this evening.
This year, Impact Theater Live Showcase is dedicated to the beloved memory of Mr. James Brown, who passed away earlier this year. Mr. Brown was a Sarasota native and esteemed educator and community activist. Ella Rose Sherman, who was Mr. Brown's student partner for Impact Theater's inaugural year, is going to share the art piece she created that was inspired by her friendship with Mr. Brown.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Ella Rose Sherman. I'm currently a junior at Pineview, but in my freshman year, I was very fortunate to be part of the first year of Impact Theater and be an agent of impact myself. I did a lot of things with Impact Theater. I helped paint the mural. I was interviewed on behalf of them with the local news. But the most important thing out of all of those was that I was very lucky to get to interview Mr. James Brown. He taught us so much about respect, about holding your head high despite whatever you might be going through, about being observant, and always projecting your voice and trying to change the injustices that you see in the world. It was a while ago that I made this painting, but the meaning is still embodied. I used a golden eagle to symbolize him as part of my creative project because golden eagles are a symbol of nobility, of power, of respect. And also, I embodied some different parts of his life in the different images here. So the eagle in the top right corner on the fence post represents the message that he left to all of us students about how we must be observant of the world around us and not be complacent in what's going on. The talons are to represent the more difficult experiences that he had growing up. Of course, he grew up during a time of segregation and when racism was more normalized, and he faced many hardships growing up. But also, he was a teacher during desegregation of schools. So he lived during this transition period, and that's represented by the eagle taking flight, being caught in between that, therefore making his stories extremely valuable to understanding this world and also keep telling those stories as we move forward. And not only did he teach me about his experiences and what it was like to grow up during that time, but he also told me how important it is to have a voice and to continue telling these stories. I used to be really scared of public speaking, but now because of him and interviewing him, I feel motivated and empowered to continue telling his story. So it is so true and so important what these elders do for us, what they teach us, and that we keep telling their stories forever.
Thank you for sharing your art and those reflections on James Brown. He was indeed a pillar of the community, and he's already sorely missed by those who knew him and loved him. His beloved wife, Yvonne, and his family are here in our audience. Will the Brown family please stand up so that we can acknowledge you and Mr. Brown's memory? May I invite Caroline Spiegel, who was also Mr. Brown's student partner in year 1, to join us as we ask Mrs. Brown and the Brown family to accept Ella Rose's painting as a token of our appreciation and respect for what we know of Mr. Brown. Also, I want to thank Walter and Betty for sharing your collective vision for this amazing program. I must say that our community is incredibly lucky and blessed to have this project. Now we're going to kick off the showcase with a musical introduction to our program's theme with Ann Morrison, Perry Smilo, Nate Jacobs, and the Westcoast Black Theater. They will be singing I'm Gonna Walk It With You.
Good evening, everybody.
Well, it looks like it might be a hard road, but I'm gonna walk it with you. And I know that you might have a heavy load, but I can carry some too. I will lift you up when they push you down. I will raise my voice and stand my ground. It looks like it might be a hard road, but I'm gonna walk it with you.
And it looks like it might be a long night, but I ain't going nowhere. And I know it's gonna be a hard fight, but I will stay right here. I will shine a light in the darkest night, in the man in the tallest tower. It looks like it might be a long night, but I ain't going nowhere.
I will work, I will work,
I will fight,
I will fight, I will strive in the name of love. I will speak, I will speak,
I will shout,
I will shout, I will sing it to the skies above. Well, it looks like it might be a perilous climb, but I will follow your lead.
and I know it might be a long time till each and every one of us is free.
But I will hold on tight,
I'll stand by your side
I will be with you
through the whole damn ride.
It looks like it might be a perilous climb, but I will follow your lead. Well, it looks like it might be a hard road, but I'm gonna walk it with you. And you know that you might have a heavy load, but I can carry some too. I will lift you up when they push you down. I will raise my voice and stand my ground. It looks like it might be a hard road, but I'm gonna walk it with you. That's right. Well, I'm gonna walk it with you.
Oh, my sister,
I'm gonna walk it with you. I will walk, I will walk,
I will climb,
I will climb, shine like the whole night through, because it looks like it might be a hard road, but I'm gonna walk it with you.
Now it's time for our Agents of Impact to share their creative and insightful tributes. I'll introduce them one at a time. Their African American elder or Holocaust survivor partner will accompany them to the stage, and they'll share their presentations. And we're going to begin with Olivia Spiegel. Olivia is a junior at Lakewood Ranch High School. She'll present a spoken word essay she wrote that was inspired by the time she spent with her African American elder partner, Helen James, who, by the way, Helen is my beloved bonus mother. So I'm delighted to see her be honored and have Olivia to tell her story.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here today. Fortitude, resilience, and persistence. These three words can be used to describe the qualities of Helen James. Despite moving from Alabama to Florida at a young age, she was imbued with great mental fortitude. From the loss of her late husband, she demonstrated resilience to continue his legacy. And finally, she has shown persistence throughout her career in educating African American voters. Those three characteristics help form a life dedicated to public service and a continuation of the fight against racial inequality. Mrs. Helen James was plucked from a simple farm life in Alabama to the sprawling urban center of Sarasota, Florida, where she experienced the unfathomable integrated schools. What is now deemed commonplace was once a radical shift in society. Mrs. James was among the first to experience Sarasota High School beside her white counterparts, and because of this, has shaped her into the wise, compassionate, and loving woman she is today. Helen experienced overt accounts of racism during her high school years, as she wasn't allowed to fulfill her passion for cheerleading due to the color of her skin. A dream shattered, Helen turned to her African American friends for support and companionship. While there were many lessons to be learned from interviewing Mrs. James, one moment in particular struck me. This was her dedication to civic projects despite the adversity she had endured. Once graduating high school, Mrs. James turned to a life of community service and bettering the lives of African Americans nationwide. She is now on the executive board for the Sarasota branch of the NAACP, whose mission strives to secure the educational, political, and economic equality of rights to eliminate race-based discrimination. She's also on the Newtown Business Council, whose goal aims to revitalize the Black community of Sarasota. Her passion for social and political activism for people of color sparked from her late husband, Dr. Edward James II. Dr. James was an inspiring man whom Helen spoke of with the utmost regard and love for during our interview. Dr. James was an advocate for civil rights at the national level, and Helen continues his legacy for civil rights through her position as president of the Suncoast Women in Action. This organization is committed to ensuring that the electoral process fairly represents the rights of citizens in Sarasota and Manatee County. Her unwavering dedication to the betterment of African Americans is emphasized through her steadfast civic engagement. After interviewing Mrs. James, I was overwhelmed by one feeling: gratitude. I am grateful for the opportunity Impact Theater has given me, the chance to explore parallels between two unseemingly similar cultures. As a Jewish American standing and speaking here before you, I am grateful for this eye-opening experience to uncover our commonalities between the African American community, and is one I will hold close to my heart. I am grateful for the friends I have made along the way, and most of all, for Helen. In our interview, you spoke with the wisdom of your ancestors. Now, speaking as an agent of impact, I am devoted to preventing ignorance and hatred, and most of all, to the crucial task of keeping stories like yours alive for the future generations. Helen, you are a catalyst for change with a fearless spirit, and I am honored to be able to tell your story. Your fortitude, your resilience, and your persistence have inspired me to never back down in the face of adversity. Thank you.
Next, we have the Samedi brothers. They're going to share their artistic interpretations of their interview with Holocaust survivor George Erdstein. Unfortunately, George could not be with us tonight, but he has sent a video with a special message to Israel and Isaiah.
First of all, I apologize for not being able to join you at the this very nice Impact Theater event, but I do want to thank both Isaiah and Israel for actually interviewing me. It was the pleasure on my part to meet both of you. You were both very special young men. In fact, just your names themselves must have given me a clue that there was something special about you. Now, the Impact Theater, I think, was brilliant in its concept of joining one generation with an older generation and also mixing two cultures. And in a sense, we're cross-pollinating. I think that was a wonderful idea, and I think it was successful in the interview that you gave me. And actually, it was a conversation because I got a little information on you as well. So I'm curious how this interpretation on your part will work out. I won't be there, but I hope to find out how it works out. It must be very creative because you guys are both creative in that one of you is doing a sculptural interpretation of our meeting, and the other is doing a musical version. That's got to be creative, and I have no idea how that's going to work out. But I trust you because both of you impressed me very much. So again, I thank you for meeting with me, interviewing me, and good luck in the future in whatever endeavors both of you undertake.
George is definitely a fan of Impact Theater and of the Zaret brothers. So first we have of the Zaret brothers, Isaiah has joined us. Isaiah is a 9th grader at Manatee High School. He has created a violin composition inspired by his relationship with Mr. Erdstein.
George Erdstein was just an infant growing up in the Holocaust. His father worked for a company that respected him and all of their employees. It was his father's birthday one year, and he went to his friend's house. He decided to go out for a walk when the Nazi officers came to look for the man of the house. They took away his father's friend, and they never saw him again. That's when they knew they had to leave. His father had the opportunity to leave Austria. He received a recommendation letter from his company. George's father's uncle vouched for him that when he came to the United States, he'll be an outstanding citizen. He was later able to bring his wife and little George. In America, George still faced discrimination as a refugee. He really wanted to be an American and ignored his Austrian heritage. Today, George accepts his Austrian background. He understands how important it is to tell the story of the Holocaust so we do not forget the lessons of tolerance. George is still active in the community with various projects. He teaches and has written both a book and a screenplay about the Holocaust. George's story is about accepting his Austrian heritage. He inspired me to write this violin piece that represents the beauty and the homeland he lost during such dark times. Thank you, George, and the Impact Theater for teaching me about a terrible time in history I didn't know much about. Learning about your story has helped me to become a more empathetic and caring person as an agent of impact.
So next up, we have Israel, who is also a junior at Manatee High School.
George Erdstein is an 86-year-old child survivor of the Holocaust and author. His family escaped Austria when he was less than a year old, and when he came to America as a refugee, he tried his hardest to fit in with other Americans. He wanted to be considered American, not Austrian. Later on, he realized that it was important to embrace his heritage and tell the story about his problems he and his family faced during the Holocaust. He decided to write several books, and he now goes around to different schools to talk about the challenges he faced growing up, and he teaches kids to be proud of who they are and where they come from. Interviewing him was really eye-opening for me because he talked about how lucky his family was to escape Austria, and I heard about some of the things he did as a child, like going to baseball games with his father and how he was a huge Brooklyn Dodgers fan. The sculpture I originally did was inspired about his story coming to America, less than a year old, and what it was like growing up. The sculpture took about a month to make and was about 2 feet tall. When I was trying to connect the pieces to the sculpture, it tumbled over and fell onto the floor in pieces. With 3 days left to make a new sculpture, I decided to do a portrait of George. This is what I did in my couple class periods. It's not the greatest so far, but... when I get back to class, I'll continue to work on the sculpture, and when I finish, I'll definitely make sure George gets it. George inspired me to learn more about his history as well as my own. I'm grateful to be able to create a piece of art that reflects the influence George's story had on me, that I can share with others as an agent of impact.
Now let's enjoy another musical interlude with our inspirational singers. They'll be singing the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. And may I ask everyone, if you're able to stand, and please, if you do know the words, feel free to sing along.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty.
Our next Agent of Impact student to share her work is Marissa Von Bender. Marissa is a junior at Booker High School. She had the challenging task of interviewing 3 Holocaust survivors when one of the other students wasn't able to attend her interview session. The 3 survivors are Refka Glatz, Marcel Infeld, and Kate Freed. Each had their own personal story to tell, and Marissa found an extraordinary creative way to represent each of them, all 3 in 3 individual pieces. She also found a common thread to their 3 stories and created an additional beautiful piece of work.
My name is Marissa Von Bender. I had the honor of interviewing 3 individuals who are survivors. Each one has a unique story about the Holocaust. But I learned they have such common bond of oppression. They faced discrimination. However, they had courage and they had hope for the future. So I'm gonna start off with Miss Rivka. Miss Rivka was 2 years old and living in Hungary when the war broke out in 1939. Now, as you guys can tell, I have made a lovely art piece for Miss Rivka. On her little quote, before I get into what this piece made me feel, my little quote that I have for her is saying, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new." But Miss Rivka, as harsh as bristles, words cannot explain the sorrow Rivka has experienced, but the drive that she had with her mother's mezuzah and note showed she's a beautiful blue monarch butterfly seeking change and freedom in herself and the events around her. But at one point, she found joy in certain events, and personally, there were beautiful and funny moments, but definitely an impact and change in her and myself. Mr. Marcel. He was born in Antwerp, Belgium in 1940. I have made him another art piece, and to read his quote, "A doe's gentle reminder to approach life with kindness and compassion." Marcel had traveled through various areas. Each area had an event, but his rebellion and determination through it all shows how peaceful he was and kept a strong spirit despite loss in his family. He kept his head high, kept going, leaving gold prints everywhere he went. On to my final lovely lady, Miss Kate. She was born in Slovakia in 1932. Now, as you guys can see with her, when the owl sings, the night is silent. And the reason I say that is because she reminds me of an owl. As silent as she looks, her voice and spirit echoes like an owl, guiding herself and others through harmful events. But the wisdom, she had just wanted me to listen more and stay silent and take every beautiful and powerful lesson she had experienced and has taught me to be a better human than what I am right now.
Our next student is Daniel Sacolarius. Daniel is in the 9th grade at Riverview High School. He interviewed Elder Odessa Butler, and he'll be presenting the scene he wrote for a screenplay which would highlight pivotal events in Odessa Butler's life.
Okay. Hello, everybody. In my recent interview with Odessa Butler, I was deeply struck by her life experiences and resilience. Meeting Odessa reminded me of the importance of listening to diverse voices and learning from their experiences. Odessa moved to Sarasota at the age of 10 and lived in Newtown housing projects. She attended Booker Elementary and High School, where she was selected Queen of the High School. In her junior year. This was an honor at her school. Her mother became the president of the Sarasota's NAACP, holding meetings in their home to plan public gatherings and demonstrations against segregation. This activism included beach demonstrations and efforts to integrate public restaurants and transit. Odessa experienced segregation firsthand, notably in downtown Sarasota's Main Street stores and on public buses, where she made a stand by sitting in the front instead of moving to the back. Her bold actions and community support inspired me to write a scene that captures her impactful story. Here is that scene. Exterior, Lido Beach day. A group of African American families and individuals, led by Odessa, a vibrant and spirited teenager, stand on the edge of the segregated beach. The sun is bright and the waves ripple invitingly, but the weight of history and segregation casts long shadows. Odessa, turning to her group, her voice with youthful determination, "We're here today not just for a swim, but to wash away those lines they've drawn in the sand. Let's show them our strength. Encouraged by Odessa's words, the group, ranging from very young to the elderly, began moving towards the water, crossing the unofficial but widely recognized boundary of segregation. Onlookers from the white section of the beach watch. Their reactions are mixed. The first white beachgoer outraged and shouting, "This area is not for you, move along." Odessa stopping and facing the heckler, her stance confident and her voice calm yet firm. The sea doesn't keep with time with segregation. We're here for the same salt and the same waves. We're not moving. As they continue towards the water, a young man from her group, Marcus, looks to Odessa, his eyes with anxiety. Marcus says to Odessa, "Are we really safe doing this, Odessa?" Odessa, offering her tone nurturing yet bold, "Today we make it safe by being here together. Unity is our safety, Marcus." The group reaches the water, and the scene transforms. Children laugh and splash, elderly folk ease themselves into the waves, and the middle-aged find comfort in the cool embrace of the ocean. A second white beachgoer, moved by the joy and unity, speaks out more to themselves than anyone else. He says, reflectively, "Perhaps it's time we rethink these old rules." Odessa hears this and nods slightly, focusing on her community, enjoying a freedom long denied. She joins a group of children, lifting one of the younger ones to splash higher, her laughter mingling with others. Odessa says to herself, "This is what freedom looks like. Today these waves carry our hopes." End scene. As Odessa shared her journey through challenges and triumphs, her words carried wisdom and insight. Odessa's story showed the struggle against injustice and the power of perseverance. Her resilience inspired me to reflect on my beliefs and actions, reigniting my commitment to become an agent of impact, advocating for fairness and equality.
Daniel, what a vivid and beautifully depicted reflection of Odessa's life. Thank you for that. And what an example of how important the arts are, to have our words, to have our experiences told by people like Daniel. Thank you. Next we have Siobhan Levy. Siobhan is an agent of impact presenter and created a short documentary about Elder Walter Gilbert's life. Siobhan is a sophomore at Pineview High School.
Over the past few months, I have had the privilege of interviewing and working with Mr. Walter Gilbert. A Sarasota native, he currently serves as the Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion at the Marie Selby Botanical Gardens. He's also a dedicated father and responsible for many of the murals you will see walking in downtown Sarasota. While it would take hours to go through stories and lessons from Walter's life, I wanted this short documentary to do its best to capture Walter's history, perseverance, and accomplishments.
The word epiphyte comes from the Greek epi, which means upon, and phyton, which means plants. Often called air plants, epiphytes, which include thousands of species of orchids all over the world, are plants that do not root in soil, but rather grow on other plants and survive on nutrients until they find air, water, or other organic materials around them. This makes them incredibly adaptable species. When we came to Sarasota a few years ago, we found that we could uproot the orchids we brought to decorate our home and place them in the corner of a tree in our yard. The roots eventually attach to the tree, and the orchids bloom there year after year. They can be taken from their pot, where they've lost all their flowers, and can bounce back in a full display of color and beauty, even more glorious than they once were. Sarasota Selby Gardens is one of the preeminent epiphyte research institutions in the world, and Walter Gilbert is its vice president for diversity and inclusion. Walter, who works among these remarkable and beautiful plants every day, bears in his family history a story of adaptation, much like an orchid, once planted firmly in one place, uprooted, and forced to thrive in quite another. Walter and I recently spent the morning walking the streets of Sarasota's Overtown neighborhood. Overtown was Sarasota's historic black neighborhood where during the era of segregation, both that imposed by law and that imposed by society even after legal segregation ended, Sarasota's black residents formed a loving and tight-knit community. Overtown, Walter told me, sits on elevated ground, which in a city prone to flooding makes it valuable real estate.
But those people came with a certain skill set. Because where they had lived, they did this type of work, building the streets, building the bridges, building the infrastructure. But they knew the importance of high ground. This is high ground. This is some of the highest, in fact, it's the highest ground in this part of Sarasota. So they settled here because there was no drainage at the time, no sewer system. All this was dirt roads, drainage ditches. So high ground was very important.
And so began a push to relocate the black community of Overtown to a neighborhood further north on less desirable real estate, which became the new center of black life in Sarasota and was therefore known as Newtown. By the 1970s, almost all of Overtown's black families had been voluntarily or involuntarily relocated to Newtown, including Walter's family, uprooted, forced to find a new place to anchor their roots, made to adapt in a hostile environment. My family often has lunch at Project Coffee in the Rosemary district, but in his childhood, Walter knew the Project Coffee as the Black Movie Theater. The same building holds two very different memories of childhood for him and I, but Walter has made it one of his life's missions to make sure that the footprints left in Overtown by the black families who first called it home are never swept over. He's done this through a collection of murals painted all over the neighborhood depicting black culture, black history, and featuring black artists. On the old movie theater building, there are several such murals. One, which I see almost every week, is of a beautiful black girl whose twists had been cut at the bottoms and which seemed almost to be bleeding, as though to demonstrate the devastation that cultural deprivation has on life. On another side of the building is a mural based on a photo of a black man leaning against a car in front of the theater, a snapshot of a time gone but not forgotten. And, of course, near what would have been the main entrance to the movie theater is this mural, an artistic representation of Impact Theater, a project of sharing experiences between two groups, Jews and African Americans, who both know all too well the pain of being forcefully uprooted, forced to find a new place to anchor their roots, and made to adapt. My family history shares common themes too. My great-grandparents and their families were forced from their homes into ghettos, camps, and for many of them, mass graves. Their properties were stolen, their hometowns became hellscapes. My great-grandparents survived. They boarded ships which carried them across the Mediterranean Sea, and they planted their roots in what is now called Israel, uprooted, replanted, and allowed to blossom again. Walter has also blossomed despite the challenges he and his family have faced. He told me a story of when he was around my age.
Front row, I sat in the seat, like my father told me to always do. And the teacher walks up and he stands over me, and I'm looking up at the guy. He goes, "What are you doing?" I'm sitting here. "What do you mean what I'm doing?" He said, "Yeah, I see you sitting there, but why are you sitting here?" I said, "It's an open seat." He said, "No, your seat's back there." So I thought about them looking at this guy, but I said, I can't wait to get home to tell my daddy this. Ooh. I got up when it sat in the back of the class. I got home, waited for Dad to come from work. I said, "Hey, Dad," I told him what happened. He just turned and walked away. So the next morning I get up, I'm getting ready to catch the bus. Daddy said, "You don't have to catch the bus today." Now I knew that it was going to be incident. So we get to school. Dad walks in on the campus. He says, "Show me where this room is," because that class, I think, might have been a third period class or something. So I took him in there, and Dad looked in there, and the guy was in there, of course. And he said, "Come on." We walked in, and Dad goes, "You his teacher?" Guys go, "Yeah." He said, "Can I help you?" He said, Dad turned to me and said, "Which one of these seats were you sitting in?" I said, "That one right there." Dad turned to him, he said, "That's his seat," and left.
He has lived his life in the front row, never shying away from his place in the room, fighting for his community's dignity, rights, and legacy. He spent years as the president of Sarasota's branch of the NAACP. He cares for human diversity in a Sarasota landmark also dedicated to biodiversity, and he has brought color, beauty, and the preservation of memories that might otherwise have faded into obscurity to the neighborhood that Black Sarasotans built.
I want to thank Walter and the Impact Theater program for giving me this opportunity. Impact Theater is a project mostly about listening, and that's a huge part of being an agent of impact too. When we stop listening to each other and start talking past each other, we cannot bring about meaningful change. We have to dig deeper than a few buzzwords, and we have to learn to really listen, empathize, and stand up for the truth. Nobody knows better the pain of being marginalized than Holocaust survivors and Black Americans, and it is our responsibility to listen to them and others who are marginalized so that we can help better advocate for them.
Now it's time to enjoy a moving and poignant musical piece written and composed by Perry Smilo called One Small Step.
So there's an ancient rabbinic midrash or story that tells an alternative version to what might have happened when the ancient Israelites passed through the desert, finding themselves at the Red Sea and waiting for the waters to part. Most of us know that story. This one is a little different.
Just one You gotta take one small step. Join us. One small step. You gotta take what? One small step for freedom. You gotta take one small step. One small step. You gotta take one small step for freedom. No one noticed Nacho over by the Ripley tide. He had one foot in the water, his shoes at his side. He took one step, then another, till he barely could breathe. And just when the world went dark, the waters parted and we were free. 'Cause he took one small step for free. One small step, you gotta take one small step for free. You gotta take one small step. One small step, you gotta take one small step for freedom. Sing with us. What happened? One small step for freedom. One small, you gotta take one small step for freedom. You got to take one small step. One small step, you gotta take one small step for freedom. You got to take one step for freedom. One small step, you gotta take one step for freedom. You got to take one step. One small step, you gotta take one small step for freedom.
Now back to our final grouping of performances by the Agents of Impact. We're going to present a pre-recorded video by Spencer Cohen, a senior at Pineview High School. Unfortunately, he could not be here tonight, so he's recorded a musical tribute to his elder partner, Dr. Washington Hill. Dr. Hill, please come to the stage so that we can honor you. One small step.
Hi, my name is Spencer Cohen, and I had the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Washington Hill. To be completely honest, I didn't really know what to expect going into our interview. Although I participated in Impact Theater last year, I knew very little about who Dr. Hill was or what his journey on Earth had looked like, but I am incredibly grateful that I had the opportunity to witness his story. Hailing from Morristown, New Jersey, Dr. Hill had lived in a fairly integrated society before he bounced all around the U.S. and eventually ended up in the Army. This is where he first witnessed segregation, all while he was trying to save someone's life. As an OBGYN in the Army, it was his job to help as many pregnant women as possible, but at the end of the day, if someone won't let him help them, all because of the color of his skin, then there is nothing else he can do. After hearing this story, I truly realized who Dr. Hill was, someone who truly wanted to help the world. The song Mercy, Mercy Me by Marvin Gaye is about doing whatever possible to help the world, and I felt nothing fit better for who Dr. Hill is as a person. So, here's my rendition of this Motown classic. Thank you.
Hill, thank you for all you do. Next, we'll visit with Nyla Harris, who is a sophomore at Sarasota High School. Nyla will present a collage she created that was inspired by her interview with Holocaust survivor Helga Melmed. Helga, who is 96 years old, is currently in Germany, where she's educating children and adults about the Holocaust. Before Nyla presents her artwork, let's watch a special message for Nyla that Helga recorded before she left for Germany.
Hi, Nyla and everyone. I wish I could be with you there today, but Lisa and I are in Germany. I will be talking with kids in Berlin and in Hamburg. I'm so sorry to miss the Impact Theater Live showcase event, but I do plan on seeing the video when I get back. I have learned a lot about Black history and our community in general at Impact Theater, and hope you have learned a lot about Judaism and Jewish history as well. Thanks to you and all supporters. See you next year.
The Holocaust is a story of hatred, brutality, and ignorance. It encompasses the journey of Jewish people losing everything that they have ever known, to being forced into ghettos, where they were restricted from society, to being deported into kettle cars, to concentration camps, where they were forced to do hard labor and carelessly murdered in gas chambers. Although the Holocaust left the Jewish community deeply wounded and forever scarred, there were and are pockets of hope left despite the hurt and pain. The survivors. I had the honor of interviewing Helga Melmed, a Jewish Holocaust survivor that is a symbol of hope and resilience. One of the most important treasures that Helga taught me was to love everyone and to do the right thing, even when the crowd is doing the opposite. Helga Melmed was born in Berlin, Germany in 1928 to her beloved parents. She had a happy childhood until she was 5 years old in 1933 on her first day of school in Berlin, when her teachers called her a quote-unquote dirty Jew. In quotes, she beat my hands, and I ran home to my mama and I asked, "Why am I dirty? I just got a bath. I have new clothes. My hair is clean." After that, she was enrolled in a Jewish school and was happy until 1938, when at the age of 10, she experienced the horrors of Kristallnacht. Her school and temple were carelessly burnt down by the Nazis. Soon after that, her family was taken from their homes and transported to the Lodz ghetto in Poland. Jews were forced to leave their businesses, schools, homes, and treasures behind at the hands of the Nazis. The Lodz ghetto was a confined community of Jews that was unhygienic, had a scarce amount of food, no access to medical treatment, and a small chance of survival. Her father was killed while doing forced labor outside the ghetto. Following that, her mother died from starvation. After losing her parents, Helga lived with a group of young women her age, whom she called her sisters. Later, Helga was taken to Auschwitz concentration camp, the first of several camps where life became harder and harder. She feared for her life, as she thought that she would eventually be one of the next to go into the gas chambers. However, having her camp sisters with her gave her hope and encouragement through such a treacherous journey. After Auschwitz, she was taken to another concentration camp where she had to clean up rubble after bombing raids. As the war was ending, Helga and others underwent a brutal death march to Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. She told me that if anyone tried to escape or couldn't keep up, the soldiers would carelessly shoot them. During that walk, Helga became terribly ill and thought that she was going to die. But in April 1945, she was liberated by British and American troops. She was almost 18 years old at the time and only weighed 46 pounds. She was transferred to a Swedish hospital where she had a long time of recovering. Her aunt in the U.S. finally found her and brought her to the U.S., where she went to school and learned English. Later, she became a nurse and married her best friend's brother. Helga hopes that the children today can commit to building a better world than the one she lived through. She advised me, do not fall into the trap of hating people. You don't have to love each other, but you must respect each other. Participating in Impact Theater and meeting Helga has taught me how important it is to bring awareness to world history so that prejudice and acts of hatred can be avoided. It has also taught me that although African Americans and Jewish people may seem completely different on a surface level, both have experienced severe oppression and discrimination for senseless reasons and have roots that are deeply connected. The most valuable treasure that I gained through this experience was to love my neighbor as I love myself, because we are all simply humans trying to navigate our way through life. Helga's story inspired me to create this piece of art, which represents the various parts of her life. I decided to create a collage full of color and creativity, as I felt it was the best way to encompass her life story. Starting out on the upper left-hand corner, we have the beginning stages of Helga's life, and basically it's just a lot of images and photos to represent the time period that she was born in. And this image over here is Helga as a baby, and then over here it kind of goes into her era where she was in school, and this is her on her first day of school. And then if we follow along to the right, it's more of the images of how when the Nazis took over and the images of concentration camps and the ghettos. And then this is the Jewish star that Jewish people had to wear when they were put into the ghettos so that they could be identified that they were Jews. And this image right here is supposed to represent Helga and her camp sisters. And then if you go down to the bottom far left right corner, it brings into her stages where she was liberated. And this image is supposed to represent her being freed from the Nazis. And if we follow along, this is Helga and the Swedish hospital being treated. And then over here, this is Helga after she came from the Swedish hospital, I think. This is her as a nurse now in the United States. And then this is her right here with her husband on their wedding day. And if we continue to follow on the right side, this image right here is arms together representing unity, which is what Helga basically represents and tries to influence as she travels around and shares her story. And then the last image or symbol that I wanted to talk about was the blue butterfly, which represents hope and resilience in honor of the Holocaust survivors and victims.
Nyla, that presentation is absolutely beautiful. Thank you for telling that story. Let me now introduce you to Ella Levy. Ellie is a junior at Pineview High School. She wrote a spoken word piece about her elder, Marvin Austin. And like her sister Siobhan, whom you met just a moment ago, Ellie is a fourth-generation Holocaust survivor. And she has been helping the Jewish Federation with Holocaust-related projects. Meet Ellie.
Martin Luther King Jr. once said to his children, "I'm going to work to do everything that I can do to see that you get a good education. I don't ever want you to forget that there are millions of God's children who cannot and will not get a good education, and I don't want you feeling that you are any better than they are. For you will never be what you ought to be until they are what they ought to be." When Marvin B. Austin was growing up, quite literally all over the world, there were indeed millions of God's children who did not and could not get a good education. Marvin was born on May 11th, 1956, 2 months and 1 day after 19 U.S. senators and 81 U.S. congressmen signed the Southern Manifesto, which served as a formal protest to the Supreme Court's ruling that invalidated school segregation in the Brown v. Board of Education case. The last words of the Southern Manifesto proclaimed, "We decry the Supreme Court's encroachments on rights reserved to the states and to the people, contrary to established law and to the Constitution." These politicians went on to say, "We commend the motives of those states which have declared the intention to resist forced integration by any lawful means. We pledge ourselves to use all lawful means to bring about a reversal of this decision. which is contrary to the Constitution, and to prevent the force and use of its implementation. Due to resistance like this, it took many years after Brown v. Board for American schools to fully integrate. This is why Marvin began his education in the United States in a segregated school. Marvin's father was in the U.S. military, which means that when he enlisted, he solemnly swore or affirmed that he would support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that he would bear true faith and allegiance to the same. As a Black man in the era of separate but never equal, Marvin's father promised to defend a country and a constitution that was not defending him. As a military child, Marvin lived all over the world. He is one of 6 children, each of whom was born in a different place. When Marvin and I sat down to talk, it was obvious that he still feels a deep pain that his parents were relegated to second-class citizenry. Thinking about the opportunities his parents never had brought him to tears. But despite the segregated schools, the bus drivers who refused to pick up children on the military base where he lived in Japan, and once back in the United States, the inadequate science department his school had to rely on, walking on one side of the hallway, underrepresentation in advanced classes, and many other challenges, Marvin learned and he excelled. Marvin recounted how he was identified as an advanced learner and chosen to study at a higher level. And he became emotional remembering that too, because he had asked his educators at the time, what about all the other Black students deserving of similar opportunities for advancement? It was as though he recognized as a young child that he would never be what he ought to be until they are what they ought to be. And it seems that those words define the course of Marvin's life. Marvin served in the armed forces for 3 years, but realized his life's mission was empowering his community and did not think the military was an institution he could change. When he re-entered civilian life, he graduated from college with a degree in accounting. His experiences with disparities between Black and white communities motivated him to enter the nonprofit sector, and he became involved in, as he told me, everything you could think of. This included work with the NAACP, the Urban League, and voter education campaigns, and more. A few years later, Marvin was elected to the county commission and served for 12 years in Battle Creek, Michigan. He made it his mission to stand up for that community. He was a director of finance at a $30 million nonprofit agency, but left it to form a consulting firm whose mission was to strengthen Black communities. Since Marvin moved to Sarasota 2.5 years ago, he's become the director of finance at the Boys and Girls Club of Sarasota and DeSoto counties. He built an organization called Black Communities. He's a principal consultant at RB Legacy Enterprises, which provides services aiming to improve African American quality of life. He's a member of the Newtown Business Council. He founded the Black Communities Working Together, and he's involved in the Southwest Florida Howard Club. He has devoted his whole life to making sure He has devoted his whole life to making sure that Black children get the education they deserve, that Black communities get the support they need, and that Black families have access to the future they want, that they can be what they ought to be. Throughout Impact Theater, I've learned a tremendous amount about a side of history I never had exposure to, and especially the African American community here in Sarasota. It gives me a whole new perspective about how far we've come and how far we still have to go. The quote I shared at the beginning of my speech represents exactly what I think it means to be an agent of impact, that no one will be okay until everyone in this world is. I'm so thankful for Marvin and to Impact Theater for teaching me what it means to be a truly upstanding citizen and to always do what is right no matter what. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie, for summarizing a life that is being well lived. So, our next musical performance, we have 2. But first I want to say what a wonderful and inspiring presentation all of our agents of impact have done. I know I am thoroughly impressed with the love, appreciation, and respect our teens have expressed for their African American elder and their Holocaust survivor partners. Are you with me on that? Our next musical performances are by Ailey Ailey, sung by Perry and our musical ensemble, and they're going to mesmerize us with a special version of Total Praise. As you can tell, their songs tonight were specially chosen to reflect the dignity, respect, and debt of gratitude we owe our elders and Holocaust survivors, as well as our wonderful agents of impact teenagers.
Thank you. What an unbelievable night. It's an honor for all of us to be sharing the stage with these young people and elders.
Yes.
This week is a special week in the Jewish community. All over the world, Jews everywhere are celebrating what we sometimes call the 3 Yoms. 3 days where we remember the Holocaust in particular. We stop our work, we gather together, and we remember the Holocaust. The second day is a day of remembrance in the state of Israel. Wherever any of us are on the spectrum, thousands of people have lost their lives in the last few months, and we're required to stop and remember that they lived. And then in Israel, they turn from celebration of death to a celebration of the Yom HaAtzmaut, the celebration of this fact of the state of Israel. So I mention that because those of us who are Jewish in this room are feeling all of those this week. So as we think about those, we think about these 2 pieces of music which are almost never sung side by side. So I'm first going to sing something called Eli Eli, written by a poet in the 1930s, 19-year-old Hungarian Hanna Senes, who was a poetess, who at 19 or 20 years old was brave enough to leave Hungary, become part of the community that was attempting to save Jews, parachuted behind enemy lines, and was captured and killed. And this poem survived her and was set to music in Hebrew and English. But without a pause, we're going to go directly from that to a magnificent setting of Psalm 121, an Old Testament psalm that is part of our shared religious experiences. But we're going to sing the version that's written by the most amazing gospel composer, one of the most amazing gospel composers of our time, Richard Smallwood. And this piece is sung in Black churches across America, I think it's fair to say.
Yes.
And tonight, I'm going to have the privilege of singing those exact words in Hebrew as well as in English. Eli, Eli, שלא ייגמר לעולם, החור והים, רשרוש של המים, ורק השמיים, תפילת האדם, החול והים.
about Impact Theater. How often do you go to the church and to the synagogue all in one sitting? What more can we say? Has this been inspiring tonight? I know I've been inspired.